Hi again. I'm here today in Toronto, perhaps the most multicultural city in the world. Today's issue is global identities. This week we're going to return to a very personal level of global education, a focus on individual issues of identity, power, and privilege. The main thrust for this week is that different aspects of our identity translate to different social positions, each with various degrees of and forms of power, and each resulting in different life experiences. So, for example, the social position of men is statistically and historically different from that of women. Having a first language of English affords different privileges than when one's first language is Swahili, for example. An upper class background and the cultural capital which accompanies it brings with it more power than a lower class background. This is all simply because of how we've constructed these aspects of identity into our social fabric. Now, for each of these aspects, there's typically a dominant position amongst all the other possibilities of expression of these identities. Through processes of hegemony, one position emerges as more powerful globally. This becomes obvious when we look at global centers of power, for example, where wealth is concentrated, the strongest militaries in the world, the strongest governments in the world, including our own government, and where culture is produced. A useful exercise for you to examine your own social location vis-a-vis these aspects of identity is by completing a power flower. To do so, you would need to write in what you perceive as the dominant form of each identity in the outer part of each of the petals of the flower. And then you would write how you identify for each aspect of these aspects of identity in the inner part of each petal. By doing so, this gives us an idea of our social position based on the identity constructions that are generally hidden to us in society. This is one of the key points made by Peggy McIntosh in her article, White Privilege, Unpacking the Invisible Backpack. Because of her life experience as a woman, while she was more clearly able to see the oppression of women due to the overprivileging of men in society, it remained for a long time invisible to her that she too had many privileges due to her race. In a reflexive process, she assembles 26 questions for which the answers, she feels, would be differentiated simply based on one's race. As she summarizes, my skin color was an asset for any move I was educated to want to make. So race is a particularly salient issue to consider in the realm of global citizenship education, for it has, historically, been one of the greatest standards of segregation in society. Think, for example, of the ways that things like slavery, nations, immigration, and labor classes have been constructed throughout history. Today, still, many global events can be clearly viewed for how they profit one race and oppress others. For example, look at the migrant crisis between North Africa and Europe, which has resulted in thousands of deaths. The fallout of the global economic crisis, the beneficiaries and the losers. Even here in the city of Toronto, the way multicultural issues play out in this city, in what is a very microcosm of global society here. And yet, despite its apparentness, the depth to which race is constructed to associate whiteness with dominance can be oblivious both to those with privilege and to those without it. In the video for this week, Muhammad Ali provides some entertaining illustrations of when he began to realize the contrast between things like Snow White or the black market. The connection between how race is constructed and the outcomes of global racial relations is an important consideration in global citizenship education. Of course, while race is a good illustration of how hidden privilege can operate in society, it's just one of the many aspects of a citizen's identity that provide or deny power based on how society has been constructed. So, class, gender, ability, geography, language, sexuality, and so on are others that I invite you to explore in your power flower. Along with considering Peggy McIntosh's questions, this is one good avenue to enter into critical reflexivity. Remember that reflexivity involves analyzing power in society, but placing yourself within this analysis. Thus, an important exercise for a global citizenship educator would be to look at his or her life experiences, as well as facets of his or her identity, and scrutinize them against one's perspectives on global issues, such as the existence of poverty, for example, or conflict between states and nations, international aid, relations, and reconciliation, these types of things. In closing, I just wanted to acknowledge that the topic for this week is fairly heavy, personal, broad-reaching, and controversial. But I would say it's also quite important and integral in GCE, although often the elephant in the room that goes unaddressed when looking at global citizenship education issues. So this said, I look forward to participating in the discussion for this week and also seeing how you take this up and incorporate it into your course assignments. Speak again soon.